Going into Monday, the first thing we're looking at clearly here is the Nasdaq 100 breaking out on a monster run. We had this charted out here on Twitter as well, so you can see this has basically kind of been the focal point of things we've been watching and basically going into this over the past few days. Now, Nasdaq's getting the breakout. Qs are at all-time highs, sitting at 421. You have SPY officially breaking all-time highs for the first time right here at 480, sitting at 482. The market's going ballistic. The dollar showing a lot of weakness, finally pulling back and rejecting off the 200 SMA. That's very concerning if you're a bear. You also have the 30-year yield slowly getting rejected off that key level as well, around 4.43. So again, weakness for bears across the board. The other thing that we've been seeing is increased volume on this upside breakout. Some of your highest volume you've had on SPY or QQQ in months, 70 million. This is your best volume since October 26th. Something to think about there. You go into SPY, you look what's happening here as well. You go look at data. Again, you're going to see great volume. Now, you don't need to always see great volume, but it's very interesting to see that great volume, high volume, on the breakout. You want to see high volume on breakouts and reversals, okay? And that's what you're seeing right now, and it's kind of fitting all to the plan. You look at this action, again, I've said patience, be careful, everything along those lines. We've also gone over the best hedge opportunities, shorting either Tesla, potentially even Boeing, while going long with something like Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Apple, the works, right? Those have been great performing names, and they're all running at all-time highs. You have Nvidia almost testing 600. A lot of people were saying, look, doom and gloom, this has to happen, this, that, the other. You know, it's okay to be cautious, but when you have opportunity, you have to strike, and that's the biggest thing that we've been talking about and going over here on the channel. So I'm going to go over the best setups going into next week and how I see this playing out. You also have earnings starting next week. Tesla, Netflix, IBM, LRCX, some of the biggest names, I think even Intel, reporting all next week. So keep your head on a swivel. And then you also have the Fed meeting on the 31st, which will be very important as well. I also want to highlight this statement here from Fed Bostic, open to changing the outlook on rate cut timing based on data. Again, once that news came out, you started literally flying. You were already moving great, but then you just started it was like a rocket launcher from Fortnite took off. Anyways, you went crazy after that. So again, favorite names going into this, I'm going all strong tech names. Number one, Meta. We talked about Meta when you mounted above 377. You're pushing into 385. Very, very close to all-time highs here. Okay, go to the daily, zoom out, bring this down just a little bit right there. 384, right? You basically touched it on the day. You're pulling back. I'm going to be looking at Meta early in next week in trading. The break, retest, continuation. Above 384.40, this thing could really start moving. Meta has been one of the best, most volatile names over the course of the year. I mean, look over the past 2 weeks, 350 into 384. You get over this, you could easily start pushing into 400. Now, NVIDIA, dear God, absolutely beautiful. You mounted that 508 level, you pushed above, just absolutely crazy. Now we look here on the 1 hour time frame, you're pushing back into basically $600. This is crazy. I mean, this is nuts, right? You know, bears are just getting absolutely tore up. We mentioned last week all those options that were going to be expiring in the money, and that's, I mean, in my opinion, what's carrying this thing. Now, the next question is can we mount and hold above 600? Because if that's the case, we've seen a lot of that flow being dumped into there. Now, before we go into anything else, if you want to get more updates on these charts and learn everything about this, first of all, we have this totally free. Our Discord is totally capped, so we have no room there. But we always want to have free content for you guys. This is our newsletter. The link is down below. We're not advertising anything to you. We give you all the S&P 500 levels, the Nasdaq levels, some of our favorite stocks, other indexes, the Russell, Tesla, everything in between Meta. Now, if you go over to Tesla, what did we talk about this week? We talked about breaking the 200 weekly. We said if you break and dip down below 218.11, where were we targeting, right? So Tesla might experience further drops towards, this was the previous week, right? So now we look here. When you break below this, 214, 206, 198. We go back into Tesla. Well, where exactly did we start dipping to? You started dipping down towards that 206 level that we mentioned here on the newsletter, and things you have to be paying attention to. We also knew Tesla was one of the weakest names despite all the strength across the board. Meta, we talked about pushing into all-time highs and getting the push there. Again, potentially reaching all-time highs. This is the beginning of last week, so make sure you're tapped in. This is 100% free. Take advantage while you can. Now, again, let's jump back into these charts and start going over more stuff here. We have the liquidity levels here on Tesla. Now, a lot of you guys are very interested in Tesla. Let me just give you my quick opinion here on it. Everyone's talking about the potential inverse head and shoulders, and I'm all for it. Maybe this forms out. Maybe this looks cool. But there's no reason to be going long on a name like this, despite how it looks, when you're rejecting the 200 weekly and the 200 daily. If we're below the 200 weekly and the daily, you got to be cautious. So when I'm looking at this chart, I'm not thinking about going long. At the very least, you got to mount back above 214, but you really need to get above 218 before I can even go long. If next week you get above 218, I could see this going long into 232, but that's the only opportunity. Other than that, I'd be going long on other tech names and shorting Tesla personally, using Tesla almost as a hedge. Again, moving a little bit further, Apple, we talked about this one. If you don't follow on Twitter, again, I recommend you do so. I zoom back out. I'm just going back over for reference so you guys can see. January 18th at noon. Okay, go look at exactly when. Apple over 187 might be the next man up, one of the best looking stocks. Again, that was yesterday. You pumped up, you dipped down. That's when I posted it. And then you shot into 191, which was target number 1. After this, target number 2 is at 194. You also started to fill that gap right there near 192. So congratulations if you traded that name. Apple, again, you're starting to get some good news around them. Anytime you have bad news on them, they push down to the 200, 1, 2. You bounce off that level. Now you're moving back into highs, mounting resistance and trying to push back into 194. Another great name. I think Apple is one of those names you got to be watching, especially into earnings. I don't know if earnings are going to go that well for them, but I do like them into earnings at the very least. Going into Netflix, they have earnings next week. Definitely want to talk about these guys. One, their earnings probably are one of my favorites to be looking forward to. They always have pretty decent earnings. Also, too, if you're looking at my chart and you're kind of wondering some of these indicators that I'm using and why I'm going over them, again, so we have our liquidity levels up here. We have our fair value gaps. We have our supply and demand zones and our key levels. You can use Chart Prime right here. This is all the indicators. You have a bunch of indicators, some of them that I don't even use, but all these right here, and then our custom script right here that goes over volume and everything in between. But just to let you know, that's Chart Prime, and the link is down below, so make sure you check them out. Again, we use them quite a bit, and their charts their indicators are huge for when we're scalping and everything during the day as well. So again, that's what you're looking at here. For Netflix, what we want to see specifically is a break and a mount of 485, a break, mount, push. I said this yesterday as well, but look what continues to happen here. You get to 485 and you get rejected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every single time from 485, you push down to 475, 477, 475 today, and so on, back and forth, back and forth. So you're sitting in a range, but once this mounts, you're very, very strong. A great, for instance, is look back here. You mount 485 here, you push to 501. You mount it here, you pushed up to 503. So again, that's what I'm looking at here, and that's the upside opportunity. I also think their earnings are going to go well, like I said a minute ago. Intel, personally, anything to do with chips probably continues to do well. I won't trade them for earnings, but what I will say about this stock in particular is you're mounting above the 200 weekly SMA. This is a pretty influential point to say the least. You're getting the break, the retest. You could potentially move into our next chart prime level that we have that marked out right here, 54.9 up to around $56. Great looking name, very strong. Definitely keep it on the top of your radar. Really fantastic looking name. Now, we've seen a lot of names run, and again, I'm kind of switching up the tone here. Cloud names are very interesting. What if we continue to run the way we are into all-time highs? What I'm looking for is names that are close to their all-time highs. For instance, Amazon. Amazon has a 200 daily, but to push above the 200 weekly. Really bullish indicator in my opinion. You can start breaking and mounting above 159, and once you break 159, I think you're pushing towards 171. I think Amazon could start running back in all-time highs, and their earnings are probably going to be phenomenal as well. So another name you should be considering and looking at. Again, we go into something like CrowdStrike, CRM, cloud names. These are all very strong. CrowdStrike almost broke above its all-time high today. CrowdStrike gets into price discovery. This thing could start running realistically 320, 340, 360 quick. We've seen the volatility. We've seen the move over the past year, and it's been one of the best recoveries across the board. This past January, literally a year ago, last January. You went from $89, $90 to now almost $300. Okay. Really look at how this has recovered. Look at the pullbacks. They've all been minuscule in comparison to everything else. So definitely keep your head on a swivel and be watching these names. Again, I'm not telling people to get hyper aggressive. I'm not telling you to YOLO or go all in. But when you see yourself trending at all-time highs and in price discovery, you know the underlying strength, like we mentioned yesterday. Have some protection, but again, notice the opportunity. What I'm looking for now, again, Microsoft and Nvidia, those are running great. Those are fantastic. They're awesome. Okay. But now I'm looking at names that are about to break into all-time highs. Meta, Amazon, CrowdStrike, okay, potentially CRM and a few others. Those are names now that have a lot of room on the, on the roadway for me. Okay. Possibly Google breaking back out. Okay. These names could really start to get interesting and they could start to get volatile very, very quick. And once those get into price discovery, I think they're going to start playing the catch-up game to some of the other mega caps. I want to say everything is just all peachy, gray, and good. Okay. I want to say this right now. When I'm looking at the board, I want to see the dollar continue to get rejected, like we mentioned earlier, at the daily 200 SMA. Okay. If the dollar gets above the daily 200 SMA and holds, we could be in trouble. But so far, this is looking like a pretty basic, bounce. 1, 2, 3. Rejection so far. That's what I'm looking at here. Same thing with yields. I want to see yields start to weaken. Okay. You have one red day so far. Granted, the market has not cared. However, if earnings go bad, the Fed meeting in a week goes bad, maybe this could turn the market around. So I don't want to count the eggs before they hatch. I'm excited. I like what's happening here. I'm going to be going over every opportunity and attacking this market properly. I recommend you guys follow on Twitter for all the updates. I'll have an educational video dropping tomorrow. Hopefully more content this weekend. Have a good one, traders.